We are Americans, created as equals to one another, created with the right to life and the ability to make choices of our own. As one people, we feel the necessity to dissolve our ties to the Empire of Great Britain. As the people of the United States, we shall secure our right of liberty, right to satisfaction, and allow every person the right to pursue those same privileges. We shall receive our powers from the approval of the governed and only through their consent. At any time, should our government become disparaging, the people of America will have the right to change and to introduce a new government. Our security and happiness will be derived from these values. The colonies should have patience, and the government should not be changed from minor causes, but when constant abuse from an absolute sovereignty exists, the colonies will be convinced that it is now their duty to overthrow that government and create a new future for themselves. These days are upon us. We have demonstrated grace under pressure, but our distress has been constant. The absolute power of the king will not continue in America. The establishment of a tyranny over us will not be tolerated. America has been treated as inferior and as an unwanted part of British society. The facts are overwhelming, and there are many reasons to support the inevitability and justification of the American Revolution.
King George, from the beginning of his reign, set out to conquer foreign lands, such as Africa and India. His greed would spill over the Atlantic and imposed unjust laws on colonists who were, at the time, living in relative peace among their French and Native American neighbors. Trade was strong in the Ohio River Valley. Settlers were prospering on their own merits, with little to no help from the foreign king. King George was the bloodiest monarch of British history, and the only reason for his action was to obtain more wealth. In the process of his greed, he imposed unfair and outright raiding proclamations on the innocent colonists of America. He not only started the war on France in order to conquer their fertile woodland lands filled with trappable animals used in the fur trade, but forced unwilling colonists to join in his fight. Once the war had finally ended, he made the decision to then tax, unfairly, the same colonists who bore the brunt of his greed. Unfair taxes levied on unrepresented Americans sparked an emotional reaction that rippled through the colonies and caused the beginnings of the American Revolution. If not for his unfair treatment of these colonists, the War of Independence would not have been necessary. It is documented fact that he literally laughed at the grievances set forth by the Americans. This tyrannical king, in his own words, wanted to keep the rebels poor, anxious, and harassed until forced into remorse and penitence. If King George had not been a greedy, unfeeling king, he would not have taken his country into a war he could not afford and then forced colonists an ocean away to pay for his greed without a voice in the government enforcing his unfair and unfounded taxes.
You mean British people had a collective union such as the British Parliament. Our colonies had no representation or alternative to be affiliated or associated with the unnecessary overabundance of taxation that was levied against us. Everything our people used the most was taxed the most, such as, but not limited to, our tea and sugar. The lack of representation within American in the British Parliament was a direct violation of the rights of our colonies.
The most absurd act to be passed by the king was the Quartering Acts. These acts belittle us as citizens of the 13 colonies. The British Parliament tried to squeeze as much money out of us through many tax acts. Now the king expects us to house and feed soldiers from across the sea. We will not be treated as less than equal of a man. As inhabitants of a new world, we have faced enough trials and tribulations, trying to establish a new home for ourselves. We don't have the patience to babysit the British soldiers. The Quartering Act, established in 1965, was meant for the colonies to help the Parliament with their French and Indian War. Citizens of the colonies would house British soldiers in our barracks and public houses. These soldiers outnumbered our housing availability. The king expects us to pay outrageous taxes along with providing soldiers with food and housing we don't have, and for a war that we as colonists didn't belong to in the first place. The king, knowing that as colonists we didn't agree with these intolerable acts in 1965, would further test our patience again in 1774, by forcing us to feed and house soldiers again. These acts clearly showed that the king didn't respect us as humans and would further separate us from the British Parliament. These unjustly acts by the British would cause us to believe that we were not a part of the British Parliament and would have a direct cause to the Revolutionary War.
All right, we still have a few minutes on the clock. I will open it up to anyone on the American team to add or contribute anything else. Anything else? You
Should I
go
go
back?
up front? Do this?
You can say from there. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to refer to the law of 1642, reference to the incomprehensible codes that the colonists had to live under. These codes were written by the British, by the king himself, as in to whether it was under both religious and secular, that at the time, there's no education. We have no platform. We're just starting out. So how is it that how can we function under that? And how do you live under a code that you can't understand? Laws that we could never, ever really understand because we're just starting out. I believe it to be unfair, in case you guys didn't.
Okay, anything else? No, they cover everything, all the points you wanted to make? Okay, and that ends the opening argument for the British. Wow, they come out firing. Okay. All right. But keep an open mind until you've heard the British.
Those are the Americans.
And here they come. Okay, here they come. Show them some love. All right. And you're listening.
Wilson, you're up too.
Okay, they are being led by Carmen Andrew.
Are you doing
And Nora, are you part of the opening? Okay, can we get somebody to lead?
Sorry, Wilson, I thought it was.
Okay, we're gonna take it over. All right, great. Thanks a lot. Okay. Give them your undivided attention.
No.
Take notes carefully, and you may begin now.
So in the 1600s, we, the British, were sending our people to the New World to explore, settle, and to enjoy their freedom. As years went on, we established a family relationship as Britain, the father figure, and the colonists as our children. We, the British, we are known to be one of the powerful, or the most powerful nation. And we have overruled Ireland, Scotland, Africa, and other territories. We stand strong with a navy and an army. We have the most experience and education so that we know how to run a nation and how a nation should be ran. Keep in mind who supported and helped you through all the hardships that you faced. And don't forget who funded you when you needed help.
Parliament fought long and hard to protect the colonists from the French in Canada during the French and Indian War. And American colonists aided British soldiers in the French and Indian War during the time in which British had sole control of North America due to the Treaty of Paris.
Since the Currency Act and the Sugar Act, we've been giving you guys a lot of other things, and all you guys have been doing would basically just be throwing it away. Buy it, not use it, and just throw it away like it was nothing. Alright. As soon as your time has been served for your passage to the New World, you demand more than people who have lived in England for centuries. I don't know what else to say.
Feel like it was unnecessary, just to reiterate what you're saying about some of the products, that some of the stuff that they were buying, they bought it and they paid full price for it, or the price that was asking, but then never went to use. Like you buy something or purchase an item or a product, it's just to throw it away, so to speak, or to not use to what it was meant to.
All right, you still have a few more minutes. I'll open it to the rest of your team. Any other points that you want to get in, that they didn't mention, or any other facts that you want to contribute?
As a monarchy and as the empire that we are, we basically, we've run this earth. We've overcome the Roman Empire, we've overcome the Spanish empires to be established as the #1 nation in this world. And I think out of anybody, we would be able to maintain these colonies that are overrun by a bunch of colonial merchants that have absolutely no experience in any kind of governmental position. You don't have any kind of funds for any kind of economy. And at this point, we just don't understand why you guys are going to come and look for your freedom that you've always had for the past 200 years that you've been established in this nation of colonies.
Anything else? Okay, they rest their case. All right, what I'm going to do now is give you another intermission, 5 minutes, to think about what you heard. Hopefully you took notes, right? And think about how you're going to come back and how you're going to respond in the second round.
We lost.